Welcome back to another episode of the Matchball podcast. This is our second ever video episode. And before I get into it, like always, thank you for the support that you have given. If you like what you see, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and all of that. And today's episode is a very special one for me because this is also an episode where I get to learn a lot of things. And joining me today is a friend of mine who lives in the United States. His name is Amod Sahasrabudhe. He is a student at the Northeastern University in Boston, and he's pursuing his master's in artificial intelligence. Now, you might think that why is an engineering bloke a part of a football podcast episode? And we'll get into that later. But before that, he is associated with football. He has done some things, some brilliant things in football that we will get to know later. And he is a supporter of Manchester United. So we'll jump into it right now and just ask Amod. First of all, welcome, Amod. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Rohan, for having me. It's a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine as well. Now, first of all, let's talk about Manchester United. What made you support this club? What made you decide that this is the red-colored club that I'm going to support for the rest of my life? What made you do that?
Right. So essentially, I was around in 2007, I believe. My cousins flew from the United Kingdom, and they were huge Man United supporters. I think they still are. I don't know if they changed loyalties. But yeah, so they introduced me to this game called FIFA 07. I think every one of us might have played it at some point. And it's honestly, United is one of the strongest team in there. And they introduced me to it, and I started playing manager mode on it. I was in love with Rooney, Ronaldo, and Giggs and Scholes, and I just went and I just fell in love with that team playing through FIFA 7. And then I looked up their background on Wikipedia, saw the entire Munich debacle, and I mean the way the club always rises from the ashes whenever it is down. They've been relegated, but they came back. Sir Alex, Sir Matt Busby, the great history of the club. I mean, that just sold it to me, and I decided that this is my club and I'm going to support it now. And I'm stuck to them, even though they are in a bad patch, you can say, after Sir Alex.
Right. I mean, you had all the reasons to support United in the past. Now, what are your reasons? But I mean, we can see all of that. And it's been a bit of a turmoil for your club. It's been in a bad patch. You had a club legend as a coach. He got sacked. Now you have a German master, a fantastic German tactical coach who is at the helm of things for only 6 months for now.
Yeah.
So talking about Manchester United, I mean, you had reasons like Rooney, Giggs, and Scholes to support the club, and now and back then also the definition of success was completely different. A trophy-less United season was deemed as a failure.
Yeah.
And now you've unfortunately not won a trophy ever since Sir Alex left. So without rubbing too much salt into your wounds, I just want to ask you, in this current environment, in this current season under Ralph Rangnick, what do you think is the most realistic expectation of a successful season? What would you think that Manchester United successful season this season would be? What is the most realistic version of that?
So if you look at when the season started and with the signings that we made with Varane, Sancho, Ronaldo, obviously, it was looking like we might challenge for the title. So I was not expecting a title, but I was expecting a decent run. I mean, at least stay close to the champion, maybe 3-4 points, somewhere around that region. And it was looking at one point that we were going to do that, but something happened, and in October we just fell apart. I don't know why. And I mean, the Premier League title is pretty much out of the race. I don't think we are going to catch it. Maybe I would say a successful season is we are lacking trophies, maybe an FA Cup, a good run in the Champions League. I would expect at least a semi-final run under Ralph Rangnick. It is going to be tough, but I would expect a semi-final run. But let's see.
Very ambitious.
It is ambitious, yes. But you hope for the sky and you fall on the roof.
Of course. And as a point of comparison, last season, a club sacked their player who is a legend, signed a German manager.
Yes.
Due to face Atletico Madrid in the round of 16. And Atletico Madrid were not playing properly when they eventually played. So you do have some comparables with that certain team, and that team happened to win the Champions League that season. And it's so, I mean, you can dream, of course, you can dream and you can hope for the best that will define success for Manchester United this season.
Right.
Now, talking about your coach, Ralph Ragnick, before we get into the nitty gritty of him and his tactics, so unfortunately we've not had a lot of Manchester United games ever since he came because of
Right.
the COVID outbreak
Just
and the
had to.
postponements.
Yeah.
So based on the two games that you saw, I think you saw the Newcastle game and the Norwich game. So in the
Crystal Palace.
Crystal Palace, sorry,
Yeah.
not Newcastle. So in those games, how did you see Manchester United change their shape under Ralph Ragnick?
So in the first game against Crystal Palace, I was impressed because we were coming out, we were pressing them. Even Ronaldo was making some good runs, which we don't see that quite often. But yes, we did see some good movement off the ball. Fred was a monster that game. Like, he started badly, but he somehow something clicked. He just remembered that he's a good player, and he started recovering balls and doing all the stuff that we need from him to do, which he should have done way back. And it was quite simple. Like, you could see what Rangnick was trying to achieve with this team. With Fred, I think he changed his role slightly. He was slightly coming out more forward, like, rather than doing all the defensive work, and it seemed to click well. Against Crystal Palace, we didn't score, which looked like we should have scored a few goals. But yeah, I would take a 1-0 win. Not bad. Clean sheet. Kept a clean sheet, which is a rare thing at Old Trafford these days. And yeah, and against Norwich, though, I felt we were not that strong. I don't know why. Maybe it's the fatigue. Maybe the players are yet gelling into the tactics. But yeah, let's see. I mean, Norwich game felt a bit awkward. Like, we won, but
it didn't look like Norwich were 20th for a long period of time in the Premier League. It looked the other way around, because they were taking the game to you, but somehow you scraped it through and you won. So I mean, after all, a bad team, despite playing badly, would always want the 3 points rather than playing badly. So it's not sustainable. But for that particular result, I don't think it didn't matter much how you played, given that you needed the 3 points against Norwich.
Yeah.
Now, talking about Ralph Ragnick, we'll move on to why you're here, first of all. So now Ralph Ragnick, in an old interview, he had mentioned about how the data that you accumulate from the players and the statistics that get compiled, how they impact the training drills that the manager decides for the entire team. Now, you're into the field of data science, you're into the field of interpretation of football statistics. Can you share with me a brief origin story as to what made you embark on this journey?
Right. So if we are talking about data science, I had this as a course subject in my engineering, and it was very basic, but somehow I liked the idea of a data science more than a traditional computer science. So just to put it in layman's term, a computer science is more of writing rules for getting an output. So you have the fixed input, you have the rules, and you find the output. That's, in a simple term, that's what a computer scientist would do. A data scientist has the input, he has the output, he will try to find the rules. So he'll try to find patterns between the data and what you can interpret from the data. So in simple terms, that is a job of a data scientist, to find rules, patterns, etc. So in football particularly, there is this YouTube channel called Friends of Tracking, which, if you guys really would want to check it, then I would recommend just Google it. They have a bunch of tutorials and great videos for how you can start this process. So even if you have very limited coding experience, they would begin their thing and they would actually teach you from the very basics. So it's a great opportunity for you, our listeners, to go and check it out. Yeah, so it is run by a bunch of data scientists from very reputed clubs like Professor David Sumter, and they have Laurie Shaw, who is signed with Manchester City now. I think William Spearman did a great pitch control model, which we will talk about later. He's signed with Liverpool. So yeah, it's a very star-studded cast that they have, and they invite guests to give lectures. And Professor Sumter even has a course on his University of Uppsala website. So if you want, we can even check that out because that is free. For like, you can just audit the course, you can see the course material. You cannot get a certificate, but you can check out the contents. Anyway, so Professor Sumter, he one of his live stream, he announced that he wants to start a research group for master students, and he is going to provide them some data, and you can come up with whatever research topic you want. So it was not focused or limited to just one particular thing. He gave us complete freedom as to you can do whatever you want, and we can have small presentations. So I sent him my resume and he liked it, he accepted it, and he invited me to the research group. And basically that's how it kind of started. And before that, as usual, I was watching the videos, following his work elsewhere as well, other scientists. And yeah, so in the research group we started, making up with building models for already existing work, but because the data format was slightly different, we had to go and create our own version of it. So essentially we were just replicating code, but it was a bit of work. So we first started with that, and then we went on our own ways. Like everyone did a different project, we gave our presentations on it, and it was a fun time. Yeah.
Nice. So somehow it was a happy accident for you to come across that channel and just, I mean, you like data science, but you never envisioned yourself to end up in this situation.
True.
And it was that moment of serendipity that helped you get where you are right now, if I'm not wrong, right?
Very true, very true. Because so how I found this channel is quite interesting, because I was one Man United review channel, it's called Stretford Paddock, and they have Stephen Howson who's on there. And Stephen Howson, I think, is a bit of a tactical guy, I would say. And he, I think someone asked him like, I'm interested into football and I'm interested into data science. Do you know where I can find the resources? And I think he's just said it in a very one-line casual, and I happened to be on that live stream. So yeah, it's quite a bit of a, coincidence, you can say.
Yeah, and fate had its own way of redirecting you to
True.
that particular one line, which has
True.
led you to be where you are
True.
now. I'll be very honest, I am not an engineer. I'm nowhere even closely related to being an engineer. I don't even know basics of the coding and everything. So you said a bunch of stuff in the previous answer, and I just heard some words which were familiar, like code and data science and models and input, output, all of that. Now I don't understand any of that. So if you can explain to a layman like me, what is it that you do exactly, and how does it help the teams? How would you explain that?
Right. So yeah, so if you look at it, it is quite a complicated part, but that's the role of a data scientist. So he want to find the results, and he wants to share it to the clubs in a very simple manner, because coaches and scouts, the people who would actually be using and getting the information, they are not bothered about the methodology. Honestly, they need results. It's a very tough environment at a football club. You need to continuously be at your own gear, and you need to find results. So if I want to talk about it in a complete layman terms, as to what exactly, how to get into this football data science thing, maybe I can share a small presentation that I made.
Sure, go ahead.
So yeah, so if you look at it, you have a bunch of stuff in football, so it is quite a broad field. So you can have so I've just made a small chart here. So you can have a result data, which is basic league stats, match results, which you find it very easily available. Like you just Google it,
Right.
Premier League table, English Premier League table, you get this. So this is your result data, which is the most simplest form of data you can say, because all
Right.
it contains is points, games played, wins, and results. So you just have the scores like 1-0, 2-0, whatever. So it's the very basic, simplest form of data that is available, and everybody has access to it essentially. Then you have game statistics. So it contains details, lineup, substitutions. I mean, still fairly simple. Like you can still find this on Google. I think Google has that card system where if you just
Yep.
click on it, then they give out their entire lineup, which
Right.
is
Right. Right.
also readily available. Then we go on to player data. So this is mostly FBRF. If you guys have been on FBRF, you would know like they have a bunch of statistics and details that they put out. So it's like their goals, their assists, their XG, their tackles, the aerial duels that they won, percentage, and bunch of things.
Right. I think you also
And
have the the number of aerial duels attempted and number of aerial duels
yeah,
won. You
yeah,
have those metrics as well.
true, true. And then you have event and tracking data, which is, so event data is essentially the entire list of events that happen in a match. So it starts with kickoff, it starts with pass, 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 pass. Let's say aerial duel somewhere. The pass, pass, pass. Let's say another
Okay.
aerial duel. Tackle, interception. It has everything. Like it has so much going on there. It basically encapsulates a football match. So whatever stuff that happens in a football game, they have every recorded event. What coordinate was that event taking place? So they have the X and the Y coordinate.
Oh.
And then you have, yeah, and then you have tracking data, which is essentially that which is linked to event data in a way that they give you an entire frame. So let's say for an event data, let's say I'm making a pass to you. So my when I make the pass, I have the pass coordinates, the start location of the pass, and you would have the end location of the pass. But event data would not be concerned about who else is around us.
Okay.
But tracking data will have that information as well.
Okay.
So you could have the entire 22 players on the pitch.
Okay.
So in a way, tracking data is more advanced because it links you to the entire pitch. And if you have all the frames of tracking data and you play them in a sequence, you would essentially see an entire game because you would see the
Right.
ball moving, like if you
Right.
code it.
Right. Right. Right.
And then you have physical data, which is the physical performance of the player, like their speed, their acceleration, how high they can jump, like everything which is related to their physical conditioning.
Yeah, I think
And
it's
I
a
have,
black vest that they wear, right? That tracks
yeah,
their.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's I've seen that on the television. I never really knew what it was, but
Right.
I figured that it must be something to track their performance. So
Yeah.
yeah.
True. So yeah, and I've ordered this in such a way from their order of availability. Like these first three things are readily available because you can find them easily on the internet, and you can scrape the data using some Python tools. Python is a programming language, just for
Thanks for that.
you can scrape the data and you can have this information readily available. Event data is a bit difficult to get, so you have data suppliers such as Opta, StatsBomb, Metrica. So they give out a Skill Corner. They give out event data and tracking data samples. But if you want for the entire season, then there is obviously a payment structure involved.
Right. Right.
So it is not available for everybody, but you do have samples which you can work on and try to build your models on top of that. And then you have physical data, which is, I feel like I personally have not worked with this type of data because it is so difficult to procure. I believe I have not seen it anywhere on the internet, or I don't even know sources, because this is very restricted to the club because they want to keep their data very protected, obviously.
Right.
So I think, I don't remember if you know this, but there was a big thing back in 2018 or 2019 when Lukaku was just about to leave the club. And I think he leaked some of the statistics about Luke Shaw's average training speed or something like that. And there was a big thing that happened back then.
I don't remember any of this, but this.
Yeah, but I think there was a bit of a fuss. Something happened. The club was a bit mad. Like, why did you do that? Something.
I mean, was
happened.
it accidental or like he purposefully
No,
leaked
so
or?
I think they were having a debate as to who is fast, Lukaku or Shaw, or something. Like people were trolling Lukaku. You know how it is with internet and Twitter football. So I think somebody was trolling Lukaku like, oh, your first touch, oh, your speed, you're not this, you're not that. And he just revealed the entire statistics of the training match. So yeah, that was, and he deleted it immediately. But
it was enough for a screenshot by at
it
least
was
one
enough for a
person.
screenshot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's out there for people who want to check it. Anyway, yeah. So mostly event data and tracking data are raw. So you can get your results. So essentially player information is derived from these event and tracking data. So you can build models and you can build machine learning models as well, or you can build physics-based model to get your player data. So you can evaluate a player using this raw event and tracking data, and then you can process your model, like do whatever you want to do, and you can get this information. So for example, let's say this is one of the thing that is built by William Spearman. This is called the pitch control model, the picture on the left, and the picture on the right is an expected threat model. So I would explain what they both are. So essentially pitch control is very simple to understand, like to explain it to you, it is very easy to know. A pitch control is essentially, it gives you the probability, like if I make a pass, would my team retain that pass?
Okay.
So if I pass at a certain location, it gives you a metric, it gives you a value as to what is the probability of that pass being completed.
Okay.
So let's say, is this visible? Like let's say the black is a ball with the right center back has it right now, and this is the actual pass that he made to the wing back. So obviously in this region there are no players pressing him or marking him or whatever. So obviously the probability here is going to be quite high, which is shown by the red region.
Right.
But here, somewhere like here, like if you pass the ball somewhere near the opposition goal post, you would have a very low probability, because the probability that your player runs and actually gets it is quite low.
Correct.
But if you look at somewhere here, the white region, this is more like a 50-50 ball, right? Like you might think whoever is more quicker to the ball is going to get it.
Right.
So this is a basic example of a pitch control. And it is developed by William Spearman, as I mentioned, scientist at Liverpool. And the one on the right is an expected threat model. So what it gives you is like coordinates on the pitch where teams are most likely to generate their threats from.
Okay.
So it is again a value. So yeah, just to summarize this thing, this entire process is about finding values. Like you're trying to quantify everything. To put it in very, very simple terms, you're trying to find a value for everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So expected threat is just a metric as to where and what location a team trying to generate threats from. So obviously near the goal mouth, the threat is going to be high because you are more likely to score a goal from there.
Correct.
Now, here's what I have done. I decided to, so what people do is these are like very base models set up by very great minds. So what most of us try to do is try to combine these models and get something out of it.
Okay.
So if you look at it, what I did was, so I used both of these models.
This is your output. This is something that you have done.
Okay. Yeah, this is something that I have done.
Okay.
So I used the pitch control. I used the expected threat. So what I wanted to find was, what are the best passes that a team can make, and do they really make it?
Okay.
So let's say I have the pitch control. So I know what regions are safe to pass the ball in.
Okay.
And I have the expected threat. So I know what regions give you higher threat values.
Okay.
So let's say if I combine both of them, then I have something that gives me a pass which is safe. Like it can be successful, And
it
it
has
also
a
has high
higher
threat
chance of
value.
being successful and generating a threat
And correct,
together, right?
correct. So essentially, this is what I came up with. And as you can see, this here is the optimal pass.
Right.
Now,
Right.
what I did further was, on top of this, I checked whether the player actually made that pass.
Okay.
And based on the deviation of the pass, I just checked. I just gave him a metric. I won't go into the details. If you want, you can check it on my blog. Nice plug here. I'll link it in the description.
It will be there. It will be there. Anything and everything that you have mentioned
Sure.
on this episode, everything will be in the description. Don't worry
Sure.
about it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So yeah, we have the optimal pass. We just find out how far he is from the optimal pass, and we basically generate it for all events that happened throughout the game. And you can
Okay.
find out who is the player. And I think in my blog I did it with the United Burnley game,
Okay.
and I think Bruno and Pogba were on top. I mean, had to be, right?
Right.
I mean, just for a sanity check, just to see if I was on the
Right.
right
Right.
path. Yeah.
I mean, you would essentially want to ensure that whatever you are developing as an output is not unrealistic.
Correct.
Right. Okay. 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 Yeah. So I fairly understood. In fact, I mean, before your clarification, I saw that colored thing, which was pitch
Yeah.
control, and I was like in my mind, yes, this is a heat map. I know this,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
not. So it's good that you clarified it. And heat map, I think it's a player data which is just it would be
Sure.
readily
You can.
available, and it's just
Yeah.
presented in a visual manner rather
Yeah.
than a
I mean, you
statistical
can
manner.
say this was kind of a heat map. You are not wrong
Okay,
there. Yeah.
fair enough. Yes. Can I get that degree now?
Yes. I'll award it to you personally.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That degree means not. That degree means anyway. Never mind. Now moving on. You've mentioned to me that whatever you've done, so you have had an opportunity to work with a top tier Spanish club that has played in the UEFA Champions League. Now that itself on your resume must be a fantastic thing, but I know you can't reveal the name of the club. But either way, it would be a very good thing. And what was the role that you play? Like, how did your analysis that you just presented or something like that on other similar lines got incorporated in the preparation for the club's matches?
Right. So, I think I won't call it as work because I was not officially on their payroll. I was just a volunteer data analysis for them. And I was helping their senior data scientist at the club. So he was preparing a pre-match analysis report for, they were preparing against a big game, and they wanted to compile a lot of things. And I think at that time I got in contact with him, like, hey, is there anything I can help you out with? And he said, sure, like any help is greatly appreciated. And yeah, so what we did for the pre-match stuff was what the manager and the coaches need. So they want to visualize. They want a lot of visualizations because, like even today, if I showed you the formula, the mathematical stuff, most of the viewers will be bored. Like, what is this crap? What is this guy bringing? But if I show you a picture, like it attracts it. People understand it in a more better way, I would say.
Right.
Yeah, so visualization is very key for being a data scientist because that is essentially how you represent your work. And managers and coaches, they don't understand data science and formulas. So you need a way to make them understand so that it is actually relevant across the club. So yeah, so essentially it was just building a match report as to going over the opposition. So I was looking at the opposition where they are generating threats, the expected threat model that helped a lot to see where the threats are being generated from. I was looking at their XG, expected goals, it is becoming such a famous metric now. I was looking at XG as to where and what areas will the team try to take shots in. Are there any patterns? What are their approach plays? Like, are they playing with wing backs? So it was not so detailed, to put it frankly. Like, it was just going through the event data and trying to plot it. But it is really helpful in the sense that the manager can visualize it.
Right.
And he can actually see. So rather than going through tons and hours of footage,
Footage,
you
yeah.
can just give this simple, hey, this fact, like So
Right,
one
right,
of the facts that I really like, and I give it in a lot of examples, like United say that they attack too much from the left hand side.
right.
So I just made a quick visualization to see if that's true, and you could actually see that most of the passes, like 60-70 passes, are towards the left. It was crazy something.
Right, right. And I mean, first of all, congratulations that you got to work on such a cool job. I mean, if your love for football gets combined with your passion for data science and the other ancillary things, there's nothing like it. And I think so. Whatever you presented, I mean, not you, but any person who presents such visualized data for the managers to use, is that what they have in those files when they make a substitution and they show the player that you're going to do this, you're going to do this? Is that exactly what they show, or is it like, I mean, would it probably be that, or do you have anything else that they might show at that point of time?
Right. So I'm not exactly sure if it is really, yeah, but mostly they go into visualization, because if you see from the camera, you can see a pitch, you can see some coordinates here and
Right,
there.
right, right.
So they are mostly going through some sort of visualization, but I don't know if it is generated by a data scientist or a tactical analyst. So
Okay.
that,
So
yeah.
without going into it too deeply, do you know the difference between a data scientist and a tactical analyst? Like, does a
Right.
tactical analyst use your findings as his starting point or any other?
Yeah. So I think a data scientist would come up with a model, like some new idea, some new innovation of trying to judge a player, and a tactical analyst may or may not. So I don't think it's a hard and fast rule that a tactical analyst will have to look at the data scientist model. He
Okay.
can come up with his own thing, but he may look at something like XG. So XG is created by a data scientist, let's say.
Right.
He would look at that, and tactical analyst would kind of try to fit in, like as to where you can use that model.
Okay. So it's not necessary for a data scientist to actually like and understand football, but it's crucial for a tactical analyst to understand football more, you would say.
I would say it is still important. I mean, yeah, in terms of who, I think they both need some understanding of football and some love and passion here and there, because data science, like whichever domain you choose, may it be finance, may it be stocks or crypto or whatever you are trying
Right.
to check the data. I think you need some domain knowledge that gives you a good platform as to where you can start with working. So what happens usually is, like for any data scientist, it's not limited to football, but for any data scientist, you would just get the data. It would be raw, it would not be clean. And if
Right.
you have domain knowledge, then you can easily remove outliers. So for example, in football terms, let's say I get a ball pass which starts at 0 and it ends at 125, but we know
Okay.
that the pitch is of 120 yards. So if
Right.
you have that information, then you can easily remove that outlier.
Right.
But on the other hand, if I didn't know, I would think, okay, cool, 125 is just another number, I would
Right. Right.
consider
Right.
it. So in some way, you need domain knowledge for both, I would say.
Right. So football, the basics, or more like the more than basics or an intermediate knowledge of football would serve as the framework for you to
Yeah,
encapsulate whatever findings you get from your
right,
models and ultimate
right,
activities that you do.
right.
Right. Okay. This is actually very cool. Like, I mean, I'm in awe that you get a chance to work with these clubs and you provide data which will ultimately, like, you see these players and managers on television, and it would be such a cool feeling that right, that manager has seen something that I have prepared. It's
Yeah,
not necessary that he knows your name. He doesn't need to know where
yeah,
you are, but
yeah.
you know inside that
He's
he has
seen my
seen
work.
he has seen your work.
Yeah,
Right. So now, before I get into the closing section of our podcast, I wanted to ask: do you see yourself doing this as a full-time thing ever? Do you want to do
sure,
this as a full-time thing?
sure. So I was looking at data science fields anyway. I mean, I would apply to eventually, as I would look for jobs. I mostly look targeting data science companies. So football company is obviously a priority because I would get to learn so much more.
Right.
and it is something that I love and I have good domain knowledge about. So yeah, I would definitely would love to work at a football club.
Right. And I hope you do get what you seek for.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, right? So assume in a scenario that Manchester United is on the lookout for a data scientist, a chief data scientist, or the premier data scientist, whatever the designation is. Basically, the guy who heads this particular division of the club. Say they were to appoint you as the data scientist, chief, head, whatever. What changes would you make, or what new ideas would you implement in a scenario where you are at the helm of everything?
Right. So you mean United in particular?
Yeah,
United.
just Manchester United, for example.
Okay, so
and then in general, if you would like to answer in general, that is also
sure.
both answers are always welcome.
Sure. So for United in particular, I think recently they hired a data scientist, Dominic Jordan. I think he's a great statistician, mathematician, and they hired him just 1 or 2 months back, like October or November, somewhere around that period. And yeah, so the thing with United was they didn't have a proper data analysis in their footballing department. I think they did have someone in their financial department, because that is what the club really likes. And yeah, but they did hire a football trainer to actually analyze and evaluate players. So one thing that United in the past few years that I've seen is their recruitment has been bad, to put it very honestly. Like if you look at it, the season Solskjaer came in, he signed Van Bissaka, Maguire, and I don't remember who else. But
was Dallo also a part of his signing, or no?
I think Dallo came earlier. Dallo came under Mourinho.
Okay.
So with Van Bissaka, he was clearly one of the most upcoming right backs at that time.
Right.
And with Maguire, you knew he was the second best defender in the league.
Right.
So there was not really any scouting that you did. So they said we scouted 250 right backs and we chose Van Bissaka, one of the most best defensive right backs in the league.
Okay.
I mean, and then again this season we signed Sancho, best player, killing it in Germany. Varane, who doesn't know Varane? He's probably the best centre back in Madrid, best centre back at Madrid after Ramos.
Right.
Cristiano Ronaldo. Do I even need to say anything?
Right.
Like these signings are, I mean, any person can make these signings. Like a FIFA player can just sit and complete those signings.
It's basically a manager mode type of signings that United did.
Yeah. So what I would rather like to see is someone who is killing it in the Polish league. Like try to, expand your scouting network in such a way that you can actually find key players that can actually do the job for you. And I think data would certainly help in that process, because in data science, like you see a bunch of things, like you can visualize and interpret a lot of results from the models that you build. Right. And once you get that, like you have the information as to what players can do well for you. So they might not be the best players, but they will do the job for you. And this is something United, I feel, have lacked. Like we had back in the day, we had Ji-Sung Park, who was not quote unquote the best player, but
he would get the job done.
He would get the job done, like high work rate. He man-marked Pirlo out of one Champions League game. I mean, Darren Fletcher also, like not the best player, but he was, he gets the job done. Like I think we lack those players, and that would also be such it's always great to find a hidden gem, right? Because who doesn't like to find a hidden gem?
And I think Bruno was your hidden gem, I think, ever since Ferguson left, would you say? Or was it?
I would say.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing well before you signed him in the league.
To be fair, Bruno was killing it in the Portuguese league.
Right. So it was not necessarily that he was a talent who was posting decent numbers and then he burst into form of his life at United. It was like he was doing well there. He's now continuing that well. Granted that the way he picked up as if he was playing in the same league and delivering, making United a one-man team for such a very long time.
True.
But right, so Okay, so that was for United. Before you answer the in general question, like what you would want in an
Yeah,
ideal
yeah,
scenario.
yeah. So just for United, I would like to
Mhm.
summarize that recruitment is one of the areas I would like to strengthen.
Okay. Who do you think has the best recruitment network right now in Europe? Who do you think has it?
Oh,
Certainly not PSG.
no.
No
So
disrespect.
Brentford is one of the clubs that comes to mind immediately when we talk about data science.
Right, right,
Liverpool, obviously, one of the most good clubs to look for a data scientist. I mean, William Spearman, such a brilliant scientist. Laurie Shaw at Manchester City,
okay,
another great signing. But Brentford's model is interesting because what Brentford did was their entire ethos and foundation of the club is based on a data science setup. So they use data science everywhere. Their
right,
footballing thing, their commercial side, they use data science everywhere. Like they use data science for decision making at almost every field you can imagine.
okay,
And that has led to their, I mean, apart from that, they also did some changes, like they scrapped their youth academy, but they have a B team instead, which is something not for this podcast, but we can discuss that later if you
right,
want.
right.
And yeah, but their scouting and recruitment, like they essentially moneyballed it. I
Okay,
mean, for
okay.
viewers, a Moneyball, like a ba- ba- baseball, yeah, baseball movie.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
based on real
It is
life basis.
statistical, like getting success through statistics for a
Yeah,
baseball team. Like I've not
yeah,
seen it, but I've
yeah,
heard about it.
yeah.
Yeah, I read
So
about Brentford. I read a book, The XG Philosophy.
yeah, great
So
book.
I read that book. I even got in touch with the author and asked if he could tell me how I can get the data statistics to compute XG. And then he said that
Right.
it's a private thing. And then I realized that's how he makes his money. So obviously he will not give it to any stranger.
Yeah,
And in that it's mentioned, they've mentioned a lot about Brentford. And that is how
yeah,
I before they even came up to the Premier League, and then there was Twitter threads and articles about their business model, I had a fair idea about how they run things. And I mean, you can kind of see, I mean, they have sold their players who have done so well happily, because they know
top
that they
Premier
have the
League
data
players.
science backing to
Yeah,
replace them like this. Like
yeah,
Benarama played for them, went to West Ham, no
yeah.
problem. Oliver Watkins played for them, went to Aston Villa, no problem.
No
Then I'm
worries.
very sure this season Ivan Toney has been bit subdued. But if you give
Yeah,
him 2 or 3 seasons, and if he develops into the player that he is capable of, that we saw last season in the championship,
yeah.
you might see him probably take the number 2 striker role from Dominic Calvert-Lewin for England and
Sure,
get sold to another Premier League club. So,
sure.
so I mean, I have been in awe of Brentford as well, and that is how I also was inquisitive about this. Coming back to your question, in a general scenario, in a football club, how would you run the the division, data scientist
Right.
division?
So if it is at somewhere like Brentford or Midgetland where data science is their ethos, then I would just run with the flow because essentially they would require data science everywhere.
Right,
So I mean, it's not really something drastic that I need to change. But at United, as I said, they didn't have a data science analyst for I don't know how many years now. I mean, I didn't have it was a mystery, but anyway, so if it is something where I completely need to change the direction of how the club looks, it is very essential that the coach and the entire club believes in this, because if it is half-hearted, like okay, we're just doing it because everybody is doing it, and you're not really listening to what output the data scientist gives you,
right,
then I feel it is kind of a thing, like would you really want a data scientist then? But yeah, like let's say a hypothetical club and they really want to follow the ideas and the principles, then I think recruitment is one area, obviously, and something like building models using uh, the event tracking data, obviously, but use the physical data that the club generates as well and
right,
build something on top of that. So it could be interesting to see how you can go forward with that.
right. Because the player data itself is a gold mine that you
Yeah,
won't find anywhere publicly, and if you
true.
get
It
access
is
to
like,
that,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, fair, fair. So Yeah, I hope that all your aspirations in this field will culminate into something where you marry the two worlds of football and data science. And
Hopefully.
somehow, somewhere, I will also be able to brag to my friends that you see this guy, I've had an episode with him, and the reason you see this statistic on TV is because of him. I hope I get to
Well, I
brag
hope
about that.
so.
I hope I get to brag about that one day to my friends. Right. With that, we have come to the end of today's episode. It's a different episode. It's not the usual one where we just talk about football and events that have happened and our expectations and whatever. It's a bit of a technical discussion. If you've made it this far, thank you so much, first of all, and thank you, Amod, for sparing the time and joining me on this episode.
Thank you, Rohan. My pleasure is all.
Yep, and I hope that. Oh, I forgot. I almost forgot. What are you working on right now? Good, I remembered. What are you
Oh,
working on right now?
yeah. So right now, as you saw the pitch control model,
Right.
I'm trying to build something and trying to improve it, to put it simply. So the pitch control model is a 2D model, like it
Okay.
just contains the X and Y direction.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if, and like I've not achieved results, I'm just building it right now, but I'm trying to check if an aerial ball would make a difference based on the player
Okay.
height. So it is
Okay.
using a bit of physical data, like their heights and their jumping,
Okay.
and there is a lot of assumption there because I don't have the data.
Okay.
So there
Okay.
are certain parameters where I'm just like assuming, okay, this is the height
Assuming.
that you will reach
Okay.
based on
So
available
for a
statistics.
6 foot person, you would how would you send the ball and how would he receive it? Whether he has to
Yeah,
jump,
yeah,
whether
yeah, yeah.
okay, whatever.
So
Fair enough.
essentially, if height and jumping will make a difference to the original pitch control. So essentially,
Right.
it's kind of building on top of that.
Okay. So if at all your model reaches your targeted output, then
Hmm?
if your model that you are working on, if it reaches the output that you want, how, I mean, would that, if a club takes this seriously, would we see the players just drilling, jumping and heading the ball, jumping and heading the ball, rather than actually doing something else? Like if
Uh,
your output, uh,
hmm.
if whatever you've built reaches a targeted output which the managers would want, do they incorporate that immediately in the training, or are they also a little bit skeptical about it initially?
Right. So with this particular model, I think it's more like finding out where you can chuck aerial balls rather than just throwing them aimlessly. I think it would be helpful in that way.
Right.
And as to whether they're really incorporating it, I think yes, they are. Because if you look at the XG model, then it essentially says like if I want to put it very in simple terms, the closer you are to the goal mouth and the narrow your angle is, the higher the
Right.
probability that the goal goes. Right.
Narrow
Simple.
or wider? It
I
would be.
mean, if this is the goal, and if you're, I mean, here is the goal, and if you're taking a shot from here, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, depends on what your normal is. Like, I
Yeah.
assume this is normal or this is normal. I mean,
Okay.
anyway, like if you're taking narrow, let's say, then it would be different.
Okay.
Maybe your
Okay.
probability would be low, but if you're taking it directly in front of it, then your probability
Right.
would always also be high. So that's
Right.
what City does, right? Or even Liverpool, like they go high up and then they
Right.
try to cut their balls inside. So a clear opportunity for someone in the center. And in a
Right.
football, like these players really try to dominate centers, especially Man City.
Right. And I think at Chelsea in this season, they are switching to making Lukaku the focal point, and that is why
Yeah.
in the initial games where there was him involved, it was always the mid used to give Lukaku a pass. He used to one touch or two touch give it to one of the wingers, and he used to run in the middle to make sure that he was there to receive the ball. Right.
Yeah.
So this must also be an output of a particular model which someone must have done. And like I said before, I hope that whatever you are working on, it becomes something which another bigger club, in another competition, in another crucial match, they will use. And when they win, I'll be happy to receive a text message from you saying that you see how they won, recently. That's my thing. Right. So with that,
Hopefully.
we have reached the conclusion of this episode. Thank you, Amod, for joining me. And I
Thank you.
hope that you will come back in the future and with
Sure.
some developments that you have made in this without revealing too
Sure.
much to the general public.
Sure.
Everything that
Sure.
Amod mentioned, I will consult with him before dropping down the links to everything in the description. If you've made it this far in the episode, please give it a like. Please drop a comment. Please give us any and every feedback. It's always welcome. Right. So, with that, we've reached the end of today's episode. Thank you so much. And we shall catch you all in the next one. Bye bye.